Welcome to part 4 of the Jim Elliot story, the missionary story about the 5 missionaries who went to the Orca Indians. For quite some time, Nate Saint had been flying medical supplies across the jungle. He'd always kept his eye out to see if he could see any settlements for the Orca Indians. One day he spotted a settlement and he came back to base camp with his colleague Ed, and their faces were full of delight because they had spotted an Orca Indian tribal settlement, and they decided that Operation Orca was just about to start. Jim was delighted. It was 5 years since the first day he'd heard about the Orca Indians. He'd prayed for them, and here was an opportunity to take the message of the gospel to these people so they could hear about the Lord Jesus Christ. Preparations began in earnest. Deuma translated various phrases that would be useful for Jim and the others to call out to these people. Nate's wife Marge, she operated the MAF radio at base camp, which was at Shell Mera, which was a place where they were allowed to set up their equipment. They kept in touch. The 5 wives knew the danger. There was great risk in going in to take the gospel to these people that were known for killing each other, never mind killing outsiders and other people. It was hard to believe that even in the 1950s, when there were radios and video cameras, and when there were aircraft and all sorts of things like that, that there were these people that were so undeveloped, Stone Age conditions, that they didn't know about any of these things. In fact, the Orca Indians could hardly tell their own age, not because they were stupid, but they had no measurement of time, they didn't work out dates, and so it was very hard in that sense to communicate with them. Jim and his colleagues decided to fly over once a week, and they took the method that Nate Saint had developed of the vortex bucket system, and they began to drop the bucket with gifts in it. Over the first couple of days, they sent coloured buttons, they sent machetes, they dropped down a kettle, and lots of different things. They also sent clothing. And then they spotted the next time they went that these people were wearing the clothing and waving up at them. And when they dropped the bucket with another set of gifts, these people put into the bucket a parrot and some feathers, and they sent a gift back. So what the missionaries did was they took the feathers, they made headdresses, they took pictures, they printed the pictures, and they dropped them next time in the bucket so that these people might recognise them, when eventually they felt they built them enough trust to actually land and to communicate with these people. Well, the day came when Nate spotted a sandbank that was 200 metres long, that he thought it would be solid enough for him to land the plane on and take off again. And so they decided to make preparations for arriving in what they had begun to call Terminal City. They decided to call the sandbank Palm Beach, and he thought his little yellow Piper Cub would be able to handle that. And so he flew in with 2 of the guys. First of all, he dropped off Nate, dropped off Ed and Jim and Roger, and they set up camp, and they built a tree house to try and keep themselves fairly safe. And then that night Nate went back to base camp because he thought that there was just the danger of flash floods. If the sandbank was taken away, they wouldn't be able to take off again, and so he had to take some precautions. He came back the next day with the last of the lads, and they arrived, so all 5 of them were there for the first time. And they began to call out these phrases and words that Deuma had taught them. They began to shout out, "We're your friends." They began to call out, saying to them, "We're here to show you kindness. Welcome," and different phrases that they had been taught. We're going to discover in the final episode what happens to these brave young men as they take and make a link and build trust and seek to reach these people, not to change their culture, not to change their lifestyle, but to bring them the peace of God, the forgiveness of sins, and the blessing of God through faith in Jesus Christ. Really important thing to be a missionary, and it's a great thing to think about what these men did.